here today with my good friend and the CEO and founder of Go Yoga, Jennifer Shragge. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, Jen?
Sure. So I have been a Yoga Alliance certified yoga instructor for, oh boy, 9 years now. And I started yoga prior to that. So I've been practicing yoga for about 17 years. And I took up yoga sort of on a whim. I was training for a 10K race and found out that my gym had free yoga, and it sounded like a very Vancouver thing to do. I just moved to Vancouver, and my best friend also thought it would be a fun Vancouver thing to do. So we joined our gym's yoga class. It was a typical drop-in class, and I fell in love with it. And I realized that I liked it more than running. I still ran, but I found like they were the perfect yin and yang activities. Running that makes you awfully tight, and yoga, which helps stretch everything out and strengthen. And I really only practiced yoga there for the first 2 years of living in Vancouver. And then when my husband and I got married, we moved to the suburbs, and I joined a yoga studio there. And then I practiced there for the next 8 years. And about midway through those 8 years, I found myself falling out of love with my actual full-time job and wondering if maybe I could actually teach yoga. And so I joined the Y Yoga Teachers College, for lack of a better explanation for how you do your instruction with yoga. But I did it over the course of a season. And I finished right before Christmas. We took a trip to India right after, and I came back and started teaching. And so it's always been community teaching. I have never wanted to teach in studio. People ask me all the time, why don't you teach in a yoga studio? And my answer is because I don't want to. I love building a relationship with my yogis. And I have always found that the best way to do that is to have small, consistent classes. So when you sign up for my classes, you're committing to either 6 or 8 or 10 weeks of yoga, and it's with the same people at the same time every week. And I've always found that people get to know each other, even though yoga is not a group activity per se. When you see the same people before and after a class for 8 weeks in a row, you get to chatting. And I've always advertised or marketed to my friends first. And I've always had classes full of my friends, which to me is also very fun. So here we are. It's been a weird time with the pandemic and having to teach online for a year, which was definitely not my jam. I can't see myself ever doing that again. To each their own. People who can make a business out of that, like, more power to them. I think that's fantastic. It's just not my preference, and it's not something I loved. So in the summer, we take our classes outside. We do them outdoors, and that is actually my favorite out of any type of yoga, anywhere, anytime, anyhow. It is outdoors. So yeah, that's how I've come to be here, starting to teach in person again, which feels bizarre and surreal and amazing. And I'm excited, and I hope that stays on course this time around. So yeah.
I love that philosophy of the small classes too, because especially in our current environment, that's probably a great way to stay healthy and stay safe also.
Yeah, so I have had a couple questions about vaccines and my classes, and this time around, I'm not making exceptions. For my classes, will be fully vaccinated with a booster, and for those who can't meet those requirements, they're welcome to join us in the summer, and I hope that they do. But for now, we're gonna bubble our classes, and that way we can stay as safe as possible. I know gyms have been open for quite some time now, and haven't heard of any major outbreaks in gyms. So I think we're just learning to live with this virus, and I think we all need to do what we feel most comfortable with. And so for me right now, that was easing back into it, but with fellow fully vaccinated yogis for now.
Right. That's fantastic. And when you think about your practice, what do you think would be your favorite pose?
Oh, I saw that question. It's so hard for me to say. It's funny. with yoga, there are so many poses that I see other people doing that I think look so beautiful and amazing. I think when it comes down to it for me, if I was going to give a silly answer, I would say child's pose, because I just think it's the most universally accessible, beneficial pose for your body. You're never going to find a pose that's better for your back. But it's not for everyone. If you have bad knees or if you have tight hips, child's pose can be challenging. I think about my most fun pose. I'm always most proud of myself when I do inversions. So like headstands and handstands and things like that. And one pose that I find less challenging for myself, but people always struggle with, is side crow. And I've always found side crow very accessible for me and very challenging for everyone else. So I like teaching it because in my brain, I'm like, but you just have to do this. And everyone's like, I can't do that. So I really like teaching it because I think it's once you get it, you're like, oh, I did it, in a way that I feel when people are struggling to do a pose or think that they're doing it the right way, not that there's really ever a right way, but there's a wrong way. You can do a pose and hurt yourself. So I like teaching it because so yeah, for doing, I like child's pose. For teaching, I like side crow.
Excellent. And what do you think makes an ideal class?
So for me, I approach yoga a little bit differently. I always have. And I think that's just from where I was coming at yoga right from the get-go for me. I think yoga should be fun. I play music. I don't take myself very seriously. There's a lot of joking in my classes, which for some people I understand is not what they're looking for in a yoga class. And people like more traditional music, and there's beautiful music that you can get that's very classical yoga music. But for me, I throw on some like classic 90s soft rock and try to keep it light, because I feel like we have enough serious business in our life as adults. And I find that yoga should never be adding to your stress. So for me, my classes are always a little bit more, I guess, lighthearted than I think the average yoga class. Sorry, the dog is desperately trying to get out of the house. So I think that, all right, go, oh my goodness. I think for me, a class where there's some good music playing and everyone's having fun and no one's taking anything too seriously is more my cup of tea.
Right. And now I think you've touched on a couple of points already, but what do you think differentiates you from other classes? You mentioned small size, hyper local, different kinds of music, and keeping it lighthearted. Anything
Yeah,
that you think is really special about what you offer?
I think I also generally approach my classes a little bit differently because it's the same people every week and it's a continuum in terms of the session. I always try to build upon each class. So in some yoga classes, you go in and you're like, oh God, it's a power class. I don't know how to do that. And oh my God, I'm sweating and my muscles hurt. And I don't feel like that's the best way to approach a yoga program, because I think that it's the easiest way to throw people off and get them not to come back. So my classes are continually building upon the last. So my first class will be like pretty easygoing and lots of modifications and lots of options. And then by the end of the session, we're trying things like maybe a headstand or maybe bird of paradise or something that's considered a more advanced yoga pose. But I would never throw that out in the first 4 or 5 weeks of a class, because I think that it becomes quite frustrating. If you have the type of personality where you just want to do everything, and often is the case that I get a lot of runners and boot campers who are super tight, and they have sort of that type A personality where they just want to do everything because it's just in their nature. And it's a good way to injure yourself, and it's a good way to get frustrated. So I don't approach my classes that way. And I think that's one of the other benefits to having a progressive session of classes where you're doing all of them, or you're supposed to be doing all of them. That way, there's an end point where you've gotten to a more peak pose or something a little bit more challenging at the end, but not thrown in right at the beginning.
Yeah. Oh, that's wonderful. Curious about your current offerings and also where you're holding your classes now that you're going back in person.
Yeah, so we're back at Swansea Town Hall. I have a class on Wednesday mornings. Unfortunately, that class is full. Fortunately, let's say fortunately, that class
Fortunately
is
for others.
full. And so that's my morning class. And then I have a class on Thursday evenings, and that class just opened for registration. So people are slowly piling into that one for the people who can't swing a daytime class. And then in the summer, like I said, we go outside. And so that's always by drop in. I don't expect a commitment in the summer. People's schedules are just too crazy. And I think it's nice for people to come and try a class. So the summertime is also a good way to just try one. Don't have to commit and don't have to do anything other than show up. And in the summer, I try to do both daytime and evening classes because I find that most of my clients are moms. And so the moms who have kids in camp can come to a morning class. And then the ones who can't swing that, there's always an evening option, hopefully each week. It is weather dependent. That is the only problem with an outdoor class. And we did have an awful lot of rain last summer. So we lost more classes than I've ever lost in a season. But unfortunately, there's nothing we can do about that. So yeah.
Right. Um, that's excellent. And just a final question here. I know you personally, so I kind of know what's going on in your life, but you have some really exciting things that you're also working on right now. And how will that feed into your yoga practice and teaching, and what do you see for yourself in the future?
Yeah, so I took a pandemic leap and signed up for the University of Guelph's certificate in plant-based nutrition. So at the end of this program, I'll be qualified, I guess, plant-based nutritionist. And so being plant-based has been part of my life for many, many years. I think about 10 years, 11 now, I guess. And I do feel very strongly about it. And the idea of wellness is not just yoga and it's not just diet. And I'd like to, I think, your question actually got me to thinking of how I'm going to integrate the two. I don't know that I really gave it too much thought before, but I think the best way that I can integrate them, and it's something that I've always wanted to do, and I've never really had the bandwidth before, but I think now I will force myself into it, is doing retreats. So yoga retreats are a very popular thing. Often there's facilities that are just literally set up for it, where they have a space where you can do sort of indoor outdoor yoga classes, and then you can either have someone cook food for you. But I think what I'd like to do is use it as an opportunity to help people learn a bit more about plant-based eating and cooking, and showing people different ways to substitute things. And I have always loved the idea of gathering 10 or 12 moms together who need a break and just zoning out and vegging out. And I think it'll be a great way to marry the two. So I think probably I'll start with more local, like Prince Edward County or the Niagara region, or maybe Muskoka. And then maybe one day, if I could swing it, I'd love to do one somewhere like Costa Rica or somewhere tropical, because there's so much access to fresh fruits and veggies and things we don't even have here. So yeah, so I'm hoping I'd also like to maybe somehow consult. I'm gonna have to work on that part of it. I don't anticipate being done till the end of the year, so it'll give me some time to think about it. But yeah, I'm really excited. I'm excited to, have a job again. It's hard when you take, as a big break. And as a former municipal government employee, I've really 360'd away from my my original education and experience and expertise, and my undergrad's in environmental studies, so I'm not so far out of the realm. But I worked as an urban planner for many years, and this is definitely not that. So I'll have to put in a bit of effort and thought. But yeah, I love the idea of yoga retreats, and I've always wanted to go to one and do one. And so this will be maybe my push to do both, to go to one and do one.
That's excellent. You can count me in for one of those retreats.
Amazing. Yay.